Good morning, everyone. This is Hillary Hedges Report, Chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission, and we're going to get started today. We are being recorded. This is potentially our last virtual meeting. We'll wait to hear if we're going to be allowed to continue to meet remotely, but in any case, I'm looking forward to meeting with everybody in person soon. So just be careful because it's recorded. Don't share anything that you don't want to have be shared. Make sure you're being watched. And I'm going to go through and make sure everybody can hear me and is present. David Silver.
Here.
Tom Montgomery.
Here.
Clement Durkes.
Here.
Georgia Raisman.
Here.
Angus McLeod.
Here.
And I know Mickey said he would be joining just a little bit late. Our staff liaison, Holly Bacchus, is unable to join us today, and Dawn also couldn't join us today. We're meeting today because we might have to meet in person on Friday, and which was our regular scheduled meetings. All town offices are closed, and we are all observing Juneteenth. And in addition, the town doesn't seem to have meeting space available. So turning to our agenda, I don't see anybody from the public here, so there's no public comment. Did everybody have a chance to review the meeting minutes from our May 21st meeting?
Yes.
I did.
Okay.
I
Any
move that we
changes?
accept. No, I didn't see any changes. I move we accept the minutes.
So seconded.
Okay, all in favor, David,
Aye.
Georgia,
Aye.
Angus,
Aye.
and I'm also in favor. The minutes are accepted. Okay, I put reappointment of commissioners on our agenda in case anybody wanted to discuss it. Tom, Mickey, and Angus made a statement to the select board indicating their interest in being reappointed to another term. They've only served 2 years, as have we all. So we also have another interested candidate appealing to the select board for appointment, and that's Linda Williams. I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to hear either this Wednesday or next Wednesday they vote. I think it's next Wednesday. I have to check the agenda for the select board meeting, but did anybody want to discuss or ask any questions or talk about this at all?
I just hope we're able to press on. It seems like a really well-balanced team, and look forward to another 2 years. So. Yeah,
I mean, we've been a really effective team. I know I'm biased, but I think it's unquestionable that we've been effective and gotten a lot done over 2 years. So I would think that the select board would recognize that you three should be rewarded with another appointment for your service. But I guess
I certainly agree with that. I agree with that, Hillary, on all counts.
When you compare the previous Nantucket Historical Commission to this one, I think it's pretty obvious that we've done the job.
Yeah, I hope we can continue to work together as a team. So any other comments or questions about that? Or anyone want to say anything else? No need to. I just want to make sure. Okay, so we'll wait and see, and we hope for continued unity. Okay, update on in-person meetings. I know that this was in the hands of the legislature. The governor asked that remote meetings be allowed to continue, fully remote meetings be allowed to continue through September. And the legislature was debating that. I can actually look quickly to see if there's been any update. The last I heard, I've been kind of monitoring the attorney general's and offices. I'm just looking to see if they posted anything. All right, coronavirus update. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, I'm not really seeing anything, so I don't know if there are any new alerts, but I'm gonna assume that, here's open meeting law, let's see. Okay. It says, no updates. It says the legislature is actively considering bills that would extend, and we will post guidance. So in any case, open meeting allows for, it requires a quorum of the commission, which in our case is 4 people, to meet in a publicly accessible physical location with 48 hours public notice. And other folks can join remotely. So hopefully we'll all be able to meet in person. I know we would really enjoy meeting in person. But we should remember that now that everyone is up to speed on Zoom meetings and we have this technology and facility, that going forward, we can have a quorum and we can have hybrid meetings. There's nothing that prohibits that under open meeting law, as far as I know. So I think our July meeting will be either in person or a hybrid meeting. Tom, did you have a question? Oh, you were just waving to Mickey. Hi, Mickey.
Hi, Mickey.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, announcements. 2021 ATM meeting outcomes. So I made, at your request and after deliberation, I made statements in support of 3 actions at town meeting. The sign bylaw, which was passed by a wide margin. The planning board ban on pools on very small lots, which also passed. It needed a 2/3 margin, and it needed that, and it got that. And then we also spoke about roundabouts and encouraged individual deliberation about each roundabout, and encouraged people to look at our report. And that the public at the meeting supported a guidance. It's not actually effective, but it's a guidance that the town not install any roundabouts near a school. And it passed by it got a majority by 4 or 6 votes or something like that. So the town has been really divided about roundabouts, and I think it's fair to say that the town continues to be divided about roundabouts. Any comments about town meeting from anybody? Did you all go? I know Tom was there. I know Georgia was there. I sat with her.
I could not go. So
I thought town meeting was hijacked by special interests at the very beginning, but then I have a personal opinion about taking articles out of order. And it's a controversial issue. I understand that, but I hope that future town meetings will maybe revert to a more typical presentation, both in terms of time of day, time of week, not being in peak work holiday times, and allowing for more conversation before controversial topics are called to a vote. That's what I would have liked to have seen, especially with regard to Article 90. And I think Article 90
Yeah.
badly not discussed nearly well enough as it ought to have been, but it's a multi-year issue, that's for sure. We'll see more of it.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the outcomes, I think there might be something that we could do now that we have to wait for the sign bylaw to actually be vetted by the Attorney General and become part of the bylaw. But once it is, I think we might want to consider appealing to, we could start with the Cultural Resources Unit of the DOT, or we could ask the Planning Department if they wanted to approach their contact regionally at the DOT to see if we could get some of the signs taken down on Milestone Road.
Yeah, I think Nat Lowell's suggestion of sort of midnight guerrilla attacks on signs on Milestone it was appealing, but not very likely. The only sign that the town took down was that ridiculous one that said scenic view up at the top of the
Yeah.
cranberry bogs at Bunker Hill, which was such a stupid sign to begin with, but so many of them really could be removed without any damage. And I think
Yeah.
our report in that regard would be extremely helpful when we get around to dealing with that again.
Yeah, so the way that sign came down is the state took it down because the planning director and the transportation director wrote a letter asking them to take it down. And that was, those signs went up first, and there was this huge uproar. And then a year later, all the other signs went down. But I think it is a model of, the DOT wants to do things that they want to be agreeable to local interests. So I think if a town feels strongly enough that they've actually passed a bylaw limiting these signs and prescribing the size of them on all their other roads, that perhaps they would be receptive to that. Or at least give us the permission to take them down, give our DPW permission.
Yeah.
Yes, Tom.
Yeah, well, what we're talking about, as soon as you go around the Rotary on your way to Sconset,
Oh, yeah.
all you have to do is just look right there within 100 yards. I mean, there's a cornucopia of different signs, half of which you don't need at all, none. They haven't been there ever, and all of a sudden, they've just grown at a. And in reference to what Nat Lowell said, I think that's the old method of sign removal in Nantucket.
Yeah, the pre-cell phone camera method.
Right.
I threatened that much, and my daughter said, "Mom, I don't want to read your name in the paper."
Yeah.
In the police report.
Angus?
I know we've talked about the signs before, but aesthetically, it really compromises that rural feeling that you felt like you just had just a long stretch of just trees and grass and road. Very simple, understated. All the comments I hear are not about, how helpful the signs are. I know that driving that road at night, it really is a safety hazard with all the reflectiveness of the signs. And also, I think drivers in general, they want to read the sign that is in front of them to make sure that they aren't missing anything. And while they're looking at 100 signs, they're not looking at other things, people, animals. But at night, they're just blinding. So you can't really see beyond them. So if a deer is right beyond it, it's like a car's headlights in your eyes.
Yeah. And they reflect the sun too. Unfortunately, we're kind of stuck with reflective signs. I know we have a preference for non-reflective signs, but it's the requirement that these signs have to be reflective.
It's that day glow yellow.
Yeah, at least we can block the day. We can not have the day glow level. So I've made a note that once this bylaw actually becomes ratified, we want to follow up about Milestone Road. And I think it's worth just addressing the road in general, because as we stated in our report, we believe the road, the dimensions of the road, that it is a historic aspect of our island, because it's this very long-standing connection between the town and Sconset. But not everybody agrees with that. So we have to remind people, or even, present our case in a convincing way. Yes, Tom.
Also, another thing I think that's caused those signs is some of the bus stops. I know some of them are in positions where they're necessary, but there's others that are in the middle of nowhere. They just come out of the trees, and there's 5 feet of bushes on both sides of the road, and there's a bus stop there. And so there's 4 signs or 6 signs telling you that, there's going to be a bus stop sign, and then there's a bus stop sign, and it's in both directions. And there's not even a sidewalk on one side of the road. And so it's kind of, just ridiculous.
Yeah. Georgia?
Well, aside from that, there are also so many pedestrian crossings where I very rarely, if ever, seen a pedestrian cross. I almost wish we had the capacity that MassDOT had to sit there and count the number of pedestrians that ever crossed there. Because the statistics supporting this pedestrian crossing requirement cannot be there.
Well, you know, one, I think it's related to the bus issue, Georgia, because the crossings are at the bus stops. So as we think about Milestone Road over time, we could actually request, I would think that the NERDA keeps track of where people get on and off. I mean, I don't know.
I think
Maybe
they-
they do, maybe they don't, but that would be the statistics to get. That those could also be areas of future growth. I don't know. So just in the interest of time, can we move on? Or anything else about the town meeting articles or bylaws or anything that happened? Okay. So I have a placeholder for staff update. Holly could not be with us today because she has a lot of advisory. We normally don't meet on Monday. We're doing this because of all this craziness with the open meeting law and not being allowed to, potentially not being allowed to meet remotely or even meet in person because of lack of space later in the week. So Holly did send me an email. I'm looking at her updates now. I'm just looking at the email. So there, she sent me a letter from the Mass Historical Commission, which I will read when we talk about the sewer. I hope I have sewer force main.
You
Oh
do.
yeah, yeah, I'll talk about that then. And then she has an update about the grants. So she says, I have been working on the attachment A for the grant scope in anticipation of when the Massachusetts Historical Commission provides the revised draft scope to us this month, which is about our survey and planning grant. So I can give you all a few more updates from our meeting that Holly and I joined with the Mass Historical Commission. She had a comment about WPI, which we can talk about when we talk about that. And she just wanted comments on the Tom Nevers bike path, which we also have on our agenda. So though nothing else from Holly at this point. So we'll talk about the things she wanted to comment on when we get to them. The first of which is the follow-up discussion about the Sewer Force Main 3 project. So I'm going to share a letter, if I can find it on the 1,000,001 documents that I have open. Here it is. So Holly received this letter at the beginning of June. It's to Frank Ayotte, who we met with actually we met with him on June 4th when this letter was mailed. So the MHC has reviewed and accepted their post-review discoveries procedures. So they have to have procedures which tell the guys in the field what, and that assures the MHC of what is going to happen if they discover human remains or any other kind of artifact. And she says that it's acceptable. And then they've also said the MHC recommends that project planners continue to consult with the Nantucket Historical Commission regarding their concern in the use of appropriate treatments for historical sidewalks and curbing during the project. The MHC recommends that the NHC members be invited to be present during the project construction where feasible. So
Nice. Well done.
that's nice. And now I'm going to share the packet. Again, I'm sorry, I have to look through the, here we go. Let me just get to the right point in the packet. Okay, so I hope you all have had a chance to read this letter. I did compose it based on notes from our meeting and reviewed it before I sent it with Angus and Holly. And the point of it is just to, you know, capture the things we discussed. And then I included, you know, all of these notes. So what we're expecting is to have a response with some more construction details about the special areas of concern. And to be able to see the details of the sidewalk changes, which are not part of this state, funded. It's not really funded. It's a revolving fund that's being used. It's not part of the Section 106 review, but in any case, I think everyone recognizes the benefit of reviewing changes to the size and material and shape of sidewalks with us, given our interest and willingness to review it. So we were promised by the group that they would bring us the drawings before finalizing the 100% plan. So they're going to make the sidewalk wrap around this tree here that you see at the corner of Lily Street. And there's some new crosswalks going in. So that's kind of what I'm expecting for next steps. Does anybody else have any comments on this?
I think your
Yes,
letter,
Tom.
really
What?
accurately, I think your letter accurately describes everything that happened in that meeting with the few of us from this commission that were there. And I think it also, I don't know if we've had a meeting, I can't remember, since we walked the route, you and Mickey and I, on Sunday. I think it was important that we did that. And it was very, we got to actually see for ourselves a lot of the things that could come up during this project. And it's a significant historic area for sure. And I think, the closer you get to Main Street, the more intense it gets. And so it's important that I think everybody knows exactly what's going on. And those photographs that you took, as well as this narrative, are very helpful.
Thank you, Tom. Does anybody else have any? Yes, Angus.
Tom's exactly right. Walking that path, as I did before our meeting, was invaluable. We got, actually Mickey joined me for that. So he walked it twice, but I was able to look at specifics that were of concern to me, and he was able to catch me up on what you guys had noticed. So that was definitely helpful before the meeting, and excellent job recapping.
That's great. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, I mean, what concerns me a little bit about this is just seeing what they've done elsewhere, and I'm not sure where. I think probably down on Easy Street, they put in basically mostly new curbs, it looks like, without really reusing much of the old ones. So I'm a little nervous that they're going to do something similar. I mean, I know there's plenty of curb stock on the route that they can reuse, but I'm not convinced that they're going to go out of their way to reuse it. So that concerns me, just to keep an eye on reusing the old stuff.
To back up what Vicky said, that's why I asked the question at that meeting with the engineers as to whether or not how they were going to what's the word I'm looking for? Know which curbs go where. And use myself in my own business. Whenever I took some historic house apart, we would number everything and know exactly, take pictures and know exactly where it went back. And he said, well, that's exactly the way what we do. And so supposedly that's what they're going to do. But I share Mickey's concern with the town's side, not necessarily the engineer's side on that. I mean, it's just.
Well, yeah. Hi, this is Clement. I haven't walked the route, but I so appreciate all the pictures. And they did say, I mean, the engineers did say to us that they would be photographing everything extensively before, during, and after. So I don't know how we monitor that, but I certainly hope that that is the case and they will do what they said they were going to do.
The only problem with that was that they also kept reiterating the fact that this is in relation to Clement's comment, that they're going to do whatever the town tells them to do. And that's where Mickey's got a problem, and me too.
Well, they also up on your street, Tom, on North Liberty, they that looks like almost entirely all new curbing up there. I don't know what was there before.
So across the street from me and next door to me at the brick house was cement curbs that were put in the 40s. And they stand out. As a matter of fact, now it's stopping traffic right in front of my house all the time because that cement curb that's in front of the brick house and the one across the street from me near Bob Sylvia's is like a bottleneck. It always was, but right now the street is probably 2 to 3 inches lower than it's going to be when they put the finished coat on. And it's really scaring everybody because before, if there was ever a situation, they could kind of go up on the curb and just go down the sidewalk a little bit until they cured the 2 cars going by, but not right now. And that's kind of what I think you're seeing. Well, not only to answer your thing, they put brand new, sharp curbed curbstones in there, which are not what was there at all. They were rounded cement curbs.
So I think we know that the cement curves just don't survive this, and they're not old enough for us to have decided as a group that we want to take extra measures or demand extra measures to save the cement. It's not as durable a material. And I guess my question about, so there is a DPW approved and HDC approved specification for the curbing. And one of the outcomes listed in the letter is that Holly is going to get that and share it with us. We have been assured, that for the work that is required by the sewer department, which is part of this, larger sewer project, I think things couldn't be more clear about what we requested, what has been promised, and frankly, what the Massachusetts Historical Commission is also expecting. So I'm pretty confident that should happen. I mean, if not, it's pretty egregious. The other sidewalks, which are bid alternates, and it's the same team that's going to be doing that. We haven't seen the specifications of that, and a lot of them are areas where there haven't been sidewalks, so they will have new curbing. But I just, in terms of how to respond, like the plans say what's going to be done. I think, the team is professional. They're going to do what's drawn on the plan. So I do take some comfort. I mean, the problem with, right now I'm showing a picture of the new land bank park and the new curb that's down there. We can also look on Google Maps, or maybe one of you can independently pull up Google Street View and see what was there. I might or might not have pictures in my archive of that area pre-construction. I don't remember if it had the second generation curbing or if what it had. It might have had, 1980s curbing. But I did have a thought about that, because generally the DPW has been really good recently about reusing the second generation curbing where they find it, and also the 1980s curbing where they find it. But this is clearly new curbing, and there's just no way that there was no curbing there. So I'm almost wondering if this area wasn't a land bank project, and that's why it's different. Does that make sense to anyone as a possibility?
Well, we know that park was a land bank project. You think it just extended through the sidewalk wouldn't surprise me. And not only that park, that's an issue, that's a talking point around town. That park was a land bank project that was handed over to an off-island landscape design company that, I don't know, I have a strong opinion about that as usual, but my strong opinion is that it makes it look like a Darien type landscape pocket park. It's very un-Nantucket, and we might want to have a bench there, you might want to have a fountain there, but you don't need to have trees there that are not salt resistant, for heaven's sake. It's flooded regularly.
So I think it was designed by Michael Van Valkenburg. Am I right about that? Does anybody know?
garden
Well,
designer.
Michael Van Valkenburg is one of the most highly regarded and respected landscape designers in the Boston area. And he's also doing the Trustees of Reservations, like coastal climate mitigation park that's happening in Pierce Park.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe. Then how could somebody like that plant trees that don't tolerate salt water in an area that gets flooded? Are you sure of
Yeah.
that? It just seems implausible.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't looked at the design, but I do know that, I mean, I think what you're bringing up is something where like the land bank brought this to the HDC and got approval for it.
Mm.
And the HDC doesn't approve tree choice. So they chose these trees independently. I don't know what kind of trees they are. I mean, we have I don't know what to say, Georgia.
I'm just saying that it may very well have
Yeah.
been, sidewalk may very well have been part of the overall plan rather than something that the DPW had any input in.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going, is that I do think the DPW has been, I know that they have been reusing these old curbs. The problem that we have has been when they set these curbs 1 inch above and when they bury the first generation curbs, but they are reusing the curbs. So this one area where it appears they haven't reused the curbs, I'm just kind of wondering why it would have departed from the practice that we saw all along Broad Street. I mean, I don't know what you all think about the sidewalk on Broad Street, but I think it looks great. Angus?
I was going to bring up the lower part of Broad. All that was reused, and
Yeah.
it looks great. Having the rough split face on the face and the eased outside top corner makes all the difference. That sharp chiseled corner, it's tolerable to have a flat top, but to have that hard pointed corner, it just feels so threatening and easily slashes tires. I'm kind of thinking that along the Easy Street, that really may have been concrete that they weren't able to reuse. And that's why there would be so much new material. But I really wish that, whoever the contractor was probably followed specs from the DPW. I mean, I don't know why they would make something up independent of that. But new material, I would just love to see that softened outside corner. It really makes a big difference.
Hillary,
Yeah.
I've got Street View on my screen that shows
Oh, good. Yeah.
that section right in front of the Land Bank Park. And I don't know can I screen share?
Yeah. If you hit share screen, you should be able to.
Okay. Is that coming up? No, there.
Yeah.
Okay. You
Yeah.
can see that. So there's, obviously right in front of the park, and you can see these old curbs. Is that coming in? I can't see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can see.
Okay. So some of these, I don't know if some of this is concrete.
That looks like concrete.
It almost does, but there's such short sections. And then this is
It's hard to tell.
maybe even old schist. Can't be that old.
I think that's concrete, and that's what happens to a lot of the concrete is they break up in places like that, which is what I was going to mention, as we saw on the first part of Liberty Street as we turned off of Gardner. There's that high curb which is made out of granite, and then in front of Sanguinetti's there was all broken up cement.
That area
But
where
that-
you're now, Mickey, looks like stone.
Yeah.
It does look
That's
like stone.
stone.
Like stone,
Yeah.
This is all stone.
but the other end doesn't.
So maybe we should just have a conversation with the land bank. Because I mean, what we can see right here is that this is stone that we would have liked to have been reused and it wasn't. And the DPW is reusing curbing. And this is the land bank park and the curbing wasn't renewed, wasn't reused. So my guess is was part of the land bank plan and it was an oversight. Does anybody disagree, or does that sound right?
We should ask where that old curbing went to.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, we can talk to the land bank. Just ask them and, you know, make them aware. I'm sure they would be happy to,
Mhm.
well, I don't know, but we can ask them. Yes, David.
I just have a question. It's a technical question, and maybe one of you guys can answer it. So if there were a stretch of on the sewer force main number 3 of first generation curbing, and let's just say that one of the pieces broke off and they couldn't reuse it, what's the treatment for that stretch of curbing?
I would imagine that they would go to their stockpile of first generation and fit a new piece in where the old piece was missing.
Thanks, Angus.
And I also would hope that they would call Holly Bacchus. I mean, so one of the things we discussed was that there should be a point person where if stuff comes up, you know, there's someone you can call. Just in the same way for archaeological stuff, they have a person to call. But good question, David. All right, so any other discussion about sewer force main commentary or any other outcomes? I mean, right now I have on my list to talk to the land bank to make sure that they know we want curbs renewed, reused, which is really not related to the sewer force main. We have some follow-ups in our letter, some for Holly, some for the team. Does anybody want to talk to the DPW? Because I think the thing that is really complicating this and making everyone feel like there's maybe a slit twixt the cup and the lip is the total lack of communication between this commission and the DPW. That being said, we can also see that the DPW is responding to our request. I mean, they included a sand specification for sidewalks. They didn't tell us they were going to do that, but that is what they did. So looking at their actions, I think we see that there's responsiveness. There's just not communication.
Does anyone on the board have regular communication with any of the DPW members?
I have a sort of relationship with Rob McNeil for Disability Commission stuff that in fact he's working on right now. So, I mean, if I can call him, what are you looking for me to ask him or tell him?
I think there's just a need for more communication in general. But if we already have sort of an inroad and a little bit of an established relationship, that might, if you're up for that, might be a good idea.
Well, he's certainly not going to call me about this issue. He'll call me about they're working on a new, trying to expand a deck out on the Surfside concession stand building, and he wants the Disability Commission to speak towards getting, favorably towards getting that accomplished. So I talked to him a little bit about that. So he won't be calling me about the sewer force main, but I can call him. But I don't think I can just call him and ask him to communicate better, because I don't think that's going to work. So,
well, what about this? What if you called him and asked him if he would come to our next meeting so that we could talk about, sidewalk, some of the things we'd like to see. He could give us the current update on how they're looking at specifications. I mean, we gave him a ton of feedback about preservation engineering, methodologies, reusing historic resources, identifying historic resources. There's the Preservation Institute Nantucket study that's going on. We last spoke in September. So, I mean, maybe we could just see if he'd come to a meeting and talk with us about this stuff. He's obviously been thinking a lot about it. We'd like to hear what he has to say.
So just what his general mood is about how he's going to handle sidewalks going forward.
Clement, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Hillary. I don't know how to raise my hand, but anyway, I must have been last winter when we had a walk with Rob down on Easy Street and Lower Broad, and Angus was there. can't remember who else, maybe Mickey, maybe, I can't remember. But anyway, he seemed very keen on showing us what he was going to do on Lower Broad. And I think that was terribly successful. At no time did he mention that, from here forward is land bank. I mean, we did see the new park, but he said this is land bank, but he did not specify, to my recollection, that they would be doing the sidewalk and the curbing in that section of the road. So I don't know if we should walk or attempt to walk with him on the sewer main number 3 route and see what he identifies or what we identify and try to go that way.
Well, I was figuring that the sewer force main is pretty much covered because the environmental partners is going to be executing this under the oversight of Frank, and the DPW is sort of bolting on some projects which are going to be managed by Frank and environmental partners. But I was thinking just in general, it would be great to have more dialogue so that we didn't have to be guessing. And I think also we can give him the feedback that, look, there was stone curb in this area. Why wasn't it wasn't reused? Was it you? Was it a land bank? How did this happen? Can you answer our question? Yeah, Georgia.
Could we also ask him? I mean, I like the fact that the project is going to be, they've given so much thought to keeping the project, keeping historic materials, but then they finally say, but we'll do what the DPW tells us to do. So we could point out to him that we're very happy that they're intending to reuse historic materials, and they say they're going to photograph everything, and they say they're going to document what came from where. But to what extent did he expect that he was going to, that was going to be, he was not going to override that. I mean, we wouldn't put it that bluntly, but to what extent was he going to, did he intend for that to be the DPW's policy as well as the project manager's policy? I mean, so he wasn't going to go ahead, and we'd like to get some heads up that he wasn't going to contravene their plans, if possible. I don't know if he'd say that.
I don't even think that's, honestly, Georgia, I don't even think that's possible. Like I don't know. I think, and we did copy him on the letter, so
Yeah.
he's aware. We copied the town manager as well. We copied the state historic preservation officer, and Holly is our interlocutor here. So presumably, although we're not getting feedback, Holly is getting. I mean, I think at some point we have to trust that when this stuff gets put down in a contract on drawings and bid against, that's what's going to happen. So, but I do think a conversation just in general about, so we last spoke in September, what's changed? We see your new specifications, you did the sidewalk, let's just get together and talk at least a couple times a year. Nikki, do you want to invite him to our next meeting?
I was just going to ask, do you want me to give Rob a call and see if he'll attend our next meeting? I can do that.
What do you all think?
Definitely.
Definitely.
Okay.
I think it'd be great, but I think maybe we could say, could we have an annual? I mean, being our next meeting is in July, he's probably going to say he's too busy, but I don't know if September would be too late, but we could say, oh, we met last September. Can we meet again in September? We might have more of a chance at that.
The problem with the September meeting is that like all of this stuff has
Begins
to be late July is actually a really good time to meet. I mean, I don't know what's on his schedule, but just as far as workflow, and we do meet on Fridays, which I think is a pretty good day for in-office work. So
Good.
I mean, we might end up meeting in September, but let's ask for July.
Yeah.
Okay. Fall course with NAREB. Selling historic homes. So you all saw in the packet, Angus had a couple comments, just agreeing with the comments on the stuff. I'll share the screen so you can, where is the packet? Here we go. So I'm pretty excited about where this is heading here with reaching out to the realtor group. This is a draft of a state approved real estate license board course that can be offered for continuing education credit on selling historic properties. So this is not yet final. It was shared with me by Anita Hill, who is a certified trainer and also sits on the education subcommittee of the state board, licensing board for realtors. And as you can see, I think it's a pretty, I mean, it's a much more thorough course than the last one, the last curriculum. So the way these courses work is that realtors have to take 12 credits a year to maintain their license. Or is it a year? Anyway, they have to take continuing education every year to maintain their license. And the course has to be offered by a certified trainer. So they can't get credit for a course that, you know, some random person would offer. It has to be a certified trainer. And the course has to be offered according to the approved curriculum. So everything in the approved curriculum has to be taught in the course. But the course, there can be stuff in addition to the approved curriculum. So the thought was that we would work with Anita Hill, the trainer, or whoever the trainer is that would be chosen by NAREB. Usually it's Anita, but it could, I guess, be somebody else if they want to choose somebody else, to help make this customized for Nantucket. So what I would love to hear from the commission are things that we could do, thinking this, I guess they offer a few in the fall. So this would be offered in like October or November. What are some ways that we could customize and contribute to this effort to educate realtors about not just the tax incentives, that was where we started, but other issues with selling historic homes. You guys all have the packet, so I'm going to stop sharing, but I just love to hear your thoughts on what would be good things to do to make a great course for the realtors.
Well, I hate to put
Yes.
this off. I mean, Ben would certainly know the best about what people would be receptive to, and you know, he has done these courses and everything else. So I would defer to him. Sorry, Ben.
And Norman?
No, David, I'm sorry.
David.
I'm
Okay.
confusing. No, sorry. Confusing my young men. David.
David, let's hear from David.
Sure. I think having an architectural historian, or some sort of panel of builders or architects to talk about the character of these homes, to really explain it. I think a lot of that gets missed in the course of a showing, and I think it's really important. So I'd love to see a group of experts.
Do you know, David, how many people usually attend these courses?
So it's just to make a quick correction. It's 12 credits every 2 years.
Oh,
that you
okay,
need.
thank you.
So in my experience, it's my understanding that a lot of the realtors kind of wait for their term to expire and then they kind of cram it in. So there's 300 realtors on Nantucket. My thinking is that you probably get between 50 and 70 for a given course, but there also are other avenues to get, to re-license yourself. So some realtors have gone about that avenue rather than using NAREB's course. So I think part of, like what we talked about would be making the NAREB course attractive and really doing a good job pushing it out so that we do get a good turnout. So I think that's part of it too.
I mean, I was wondering, could part of it even be a tour of a historic home,
Right.
where you could go into a home, either one that's somebody's listing or one that's not on the market and is really well preserved, and just point out the typical features of a Nantucket home.
It's a great idea.
Angus.
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial to go through a historic home that is authentic and preserved, and maybe another one that is, you know, what the real estate market really sort of advertises as re-envisioned, or one that is renovated, so that you can point out things that help and hurt the integrity of a historic home. Just so people are familiar with, yeah, what helps a historic home retain its authenticity. Chimneys, fireplaces, like original walls. It's not that you have to leave everything just as is, but there are certainly more sensitive ways than others to completely redo or add on to a house.
Georgia?
I think the idea that we had years ago at the Preservation Trust of having kitchen tours was exactly that idea, that you could show a properly maintained historic interior and still have relatively updated kitchens and bathrooms, which is mostly what people are concerned about, I think, when they're buying houses. They don't want to live in an 18th century kitchen or cook in an 18th century kitchen necessarily, but as long as that's modernized, the rest of it, they can live with the beauty of the rest of it once it's pointed out to them.
Yeah, David?
Yeah, so I also got, Mary Bergman reached out to me on Friday, and she was speaking with Brian Pfeiffer, and I guess Brian went to school with a gentleman by the name of Peter Dorsey. He works on the North Shore, and he's sold houses with preservation restrictions, and he's sold, museums and buildings to historical societies, and it sounded like he was interested in possibly helping us, create this course, or at least talk with us. So Hillary, maybe we can meet with him at some point and see if he'd be a good resource for us.
That's great. Yeah. So David has reached out to some consultants who advise on tax credits, and we've been interviewing them as part of it, and thinking about developers who we could invite in. And yeah, we can do the same thing for people who could, when I think about what I would like to hear, owners are going to have ideas about what's right for their family when they look at a home, but I think if we could help realtors communicate what is irreplaceable and distinctive and historic about Nantucket homes, like the timber framing, certain architectural features, the massing and scale, just sort of Nantucket Architecture 101. I think that would really help people romance and sell these homes, and also the resources to learn about the homes, like the house histories that can be done, that a listing agent could even have a house history done, and that could be part of the story that helps someone form an attachment to a home when they're visiting it. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, I've always thought in regard to this, people buying old houses and wanting to renovate them. If the house could be sold or marketed, explaining its real historic value, and that's actually desirable, to make the historic features a desirable commodity rather than just the location or how many bedrooms does it have. But people, realtors want to sell houses, so they're going to say whatever they want to say, whatever they want, the buyer wants to hear, including that, if it's an interior issue, they want to renovate or gut it, there's really no reason why they can't. But we need to convince them that it's more valuable to maintain these historic qualities. Keeping an antique house is much more valuable than renovating an antique house. So I think there's some emotional rather than technical things that we need to kind of convince realtors to try to sell. I don't know if they're willing to do that or not, because they really want to sell, but I think it's a part of process that needs to be better handled, I think. I mean, I don't know how it's handled now, but I'm just guessing. So,
Yes, Georgia.
Apropos of that, I heard somebody say, maybe 20 years ago now at least, that what people don't realize when they're looking at the interiors of old houses is they want to create a Martha Stewart interior, but Martha Stewart was looking at our interiors to base it on. And maybe that's a good tagline. I mean, we've got the original. We've got the original that all of these so-called historic interior duplicators are duplicating. This is what we've got to offer.
That's true. And I also think about like an antique coin, you know, how if you collect an antique coin, the last thing you want to do is polish it. And that if you do polish it, you've cut its value in half. So even if you don't really like coins, you just don't want to devalue them, don't polish your coin. And sort of a similar phrasing about this is an antique and it has a patina. And yeah, the floorboards are uneven, but that's called patina. And, you know, it actually has value to the right buyer. If you don't want it, maybe it's not the right house for you. So. All right, well, one request that Marion Connolly had was, since this course won't be offered till the fall, but this is prime listing season, and there are some the tax credits are very appealing for people who want to do a lot of work on a house. And it's very appealing for us because it's like the only way to motivate somebody who's not otherwise motivated by aesthetics or history, to get them to consider a sensitive restoration or sensitive rehabilitation rather than like a gut renovation. So she asked if we could prepare like a one-pager, you know, something really easy to read, really very quick to scan about the tax credit program. And she would share it with the board of NAREB. So does anyone want to do that? I know, David, you're super busy right now with all your listings, but do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'm wondering kind of how that would look. Would that look more like is it an informative page, or is it more of a graphic, a flow chart? How do you see that coming across?
So I see it as like an eye-catching flyer, which points, first of all, like you want the reader to leave saying, oh, there's tax credits. This is, you know, tax mitigation for buyers. And here's where I go to find out if it's relevant to my project. I think that's really the point of it. So I can imagine going to the state and federal websites that educate people about tax credits and maybe doing some screen grabs and including a whole bunch of links. And then maybe, you know, we have that list. I think I sent you the spreadsheet of the 4 projects on Nantucket and how much tax avoidance they were able to capture, like the Nantucket hotel captured over, you know, $1.5 million or something like that in tax credits. And, you know, maybe we could have a you know, sample tax credits that have worked on Nantucket. Sure. And then put at the bottom, you know, coming soon, coming this fall, a course on selling historic homes. Now they might say, oh, we're not ready to, I think they really want to do it. All of the feedback I've gotten is that they really want to do this, and the course is new and developed by their trainer and is going to be spectacular. So I just think, why not make both statements in this flyer, education and a teaser for the fall class.
Okay.
That's my thought. Does anybody else have any thought about the flyer?
Well, for David's purposes, I think a trifold, you know, 3-piece thing with bullet points and the header, you know, is the tax credits and things that go into that, with just some quick narrative somewhere on the middle of the back page, with the information is really what is neat and is necessary. That's quick. People don't mind looking at that. They can read it and then they got it. Tell them, you know, dates and places and, you know, email addresses and stuff like that. how to sign up.
Yeah, and David, I mean, you'll know best if people tend to want to view things digitally or if they want something in print. I mean, if it's that'll dictate the layout.
Where will this be made available? Where will they pick up this thing?
Well, what Marion asked for was something that could be emailed to her that she could share with the board and that they could distribute to their mailing list.
Hillary, when did she say she wanted that?
Well, she asked for it last week, but I said, listen, I can't get it to you. So
I was gonna
ASAP.
say,
I mean,
I could run a couple different proofs by the group. Maybe we could just, I know that we have to meet in order to do that, but no, could I circulate that? via email?
So the way, no, but the way the open meeting law works is that if a few people take it upon themselves to do something and it's not an official subcommittee and it's not a quorum, we can talk about something. So I would just say, choose 2 people who you'd like the feedback from, send it to them and they can give you feedback, but don't send it to more than 2 people.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much for doing that, David. That's
Okay.
fantastic. Okay, so WPI Sustainability and Reuse Project. So after our last meeting, where we talked about the description of the course, am I frozen? Some people are frozen. Can people
You
hear
are
me?
frozen.
Oh,
We're gonna hear
because
you
you're
either.
totally frozen.
Yeah.
Is everybody back? Clement, you're still frozen. Oh, there you, okay.
No, you're
Are we good?
frozen.
No, you were
I-
You're
I'm
frozen,
frozen.
Hillary, but I can still hear you, so it doesn't matter. I see your pretty
Am I
smile.
still
That's all that
frozen?
matters. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Well, you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, good. So Holly and I had a call with Dominic Golding, the head of the WPI program. And I guess there's some question as to whether or not we should have we presented this sustainability project as being about recycling and reuse of everything in the home, whether it's new or old. And that this would be a joint, kind of a joint project that this was our idea. We were organizing it. So we were going to be the leader because he was very clear that he wanted one point of contact. But Housing Nantucket and Graham Durovich, the recycling reuse sustainability coordinator for the DPW, and Holly would be, and Mary Bergman, who was interested in this, would be kind of consulting people. So when we talked to Dominic, he had a call with Graham and Rob McNeil, and they didn't say anything about our course. They had their own ideas. It didn't seem that they'd read our thing. So once again, we have like complete lack of communication despite our outreach and really trying to like work as a team. It just doesn't work. So Holly, so I said, look, why don't we just do only historic stuff? So if it's something that's 50 years or more, we're trying to keep it out of a landfill. That's basically it. If it's something old, we're trying to figure out how to keep it out of a landfill. And we're also trying to figure out how much of the 50-year-old and older stuff is going into a landfill. So I made, as you can see in the packet, I made some edits. But then at the same time, Holly said, I'm talking to Graham, I'm talking to Lauren Sinatra, the energy coordinator, and maybe we can do something all together. Dominic doesn't care if it's together or separate. He just wants it like sorted so that he's not in the middle. And I'm still waiting to hear back from Holly. That's the update on the WPI project. Dominic wants like final stuff by August. So this was sort of a preliminary check-in and maybe we can settle it by July. Does anybody, I assume that you guys are fine either way. Does anybody have any opinions about this? Mickey.
The vast majority of the stuff that gets trashed to the, when someone renovates a house or tears down a house, sure, there's often some historic material in there on older houses. But I would say the vast majority of the stuff that's going to C&D is new, relatively new windows, doors, fixtures, appliances, new stuff. So there's a lot more material to work with in the new stuff department than the historic. So you know, I mean, maybe that's part of this whole study is how you know, determine the historic pieces from the new pieces and where each goes. But I can see that if you take out the new stuff, you're dealing with a much smaller issue. So I don't know if that's good or bad. It might be easier for them, but it's a lot more focused, I guess.
Yes, Angus. Oh, we can't hear you.
I think the issue is really just not wasting, you know, recycling rather than throwing out. And I think you're right, Mickey. There is a lot more new stuff that is thrown out. There's, you know, really valuable old stuff getting thrown out too, but the vast majority, as you say, is new.
Well, as you can see from the way I redlined the report that you saw last month, I really made it much more about how many older structures that we would like to see saved are being demolished, and how many interiors that are truly historic are being ripped out. And once we understand that, what are some policies that could be put in place to discourage this or motivate people to save these things? And when interiors are ripped out that are valuable, like old doors, old timber frame, other windows, especially windows, how can they be, you know, is there a place on the island where they could be reused? And then these smaller structures, because a lot of times people are tearing down an old building because it's small and they want to put in some kind of McMansion. Can they be used for housing Nantucket? And what has to happen to make that more possible? And it's often a time shifting or a storage issue for that. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like let's just, if those guys don't want to do a bigger project, I mean, we're the historical commission, focus on the historic stuff. That's what we do. So I'm curious what Holly is hearing and what, you know, but we can't really decide that in this meeting because I don't think she's heard back and she's not here. Does anybody have a strong opinion about just doing, you know, shrinking this project, making it focus on the older stuff and on policies around demolition and reuse of old material?
I think it'll be a lot easier to focus on the historic stuff. I mean, the new material could be so huge. I mean, the amount of storage and facilities that would require just to store the stuff in the process is, you know, could be more than what we're looking to accomplish at this time. So I think old is probably, I think it's kind of limited. I think it's going to be a pretty small amount of stuff, but maybe that's easier to deal with.
Yeah. Tom?
In a previous meeting, I had, I think, brought up the idea of a Matticat Mall, so to speak, of historic stuff only, not the new stuff. And I think if you did that, it might be manageable in terms of the amount that you got to deal with. But if someone has a historic property and let's say there's a door or a window that just isn't going to work for them, if they could at least go to the historic Matticat Mall architectural site and reuse a window that came out of a Nantucket historic house that for some reason had to be taken down or was just a demoed, I think there you go. It's a perfect reuse situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that certainly makes sense. And the task for the students would be to first figure out how much stuff are we talking about, and then maybe have some preliminary discussions about where it could be housed. And would there be some corporation that would like to do this, like, you know, as a corporate responsibility, giving back to the community feature. So
having done that kind of stuff, I can see flooring, mantles, windows, doors, moldings, you know, knees, beams and that kind of stuff. It's not a lot. Those old houses
Yeah.
are very simple.
Yep. Any other
Well, I think
comments?
certainly the old house parts are the valuable part and the part that is of primary interest to us. And maybe the course is a little bit flexible, you know, if they're like, oh, there are only 12 houses to study here, you know, what else can we expand the focus? You know, we could get into the proliferation of disposal of houses, you know, on a larger level, but maybe it starts out as a focus primarily on the historic structures and parts.
I just want to share this with you guys. I went up to a salvage place in New Hampshire. This is timber frame. Just, there was so much of it. Like, we think we have a problem on Nantucket. Look at all this. This is basically colonial New England there's my son. So it's pretty amazing.
Hillary, did they have anything to offer as far as where they're getting the material from and who's taking it?
At this place in New England? Well, it's a resale place. So folks, you know, stuff ends up there by, you know, companies that know it has value. They sell it to this place. And then, you know, I bought a window because I want to have an old window somewhere. They have a lot of stuff, whole interiors of shops.
Cool.
All right, well, what I'm hearing from everybody, I'm not hearing, is there anybody who wants to try to, you know, be part of a big collective program, working new and old, and have it be about the bigger picture of sustainability or something?
Oh, I'll just say, it seems to me that, this is Clement, that coming from the Historic Commission, we have to focus on the historic structures. There is obviously, we all know, a huge issue of the dumping of the new, but that is a totally separate issue. That is, you know, all the stuff going into the landfill, which has become more and more aggressive and explosive. But we should focus on the old and trying to get it reused and recycled in some way.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I think the message is pretty clear. And just for the record, the reason why this became larger is because we felt, well, I certainly felt, and you guys didn't disagree, that somebody needs to look at sustainability and livability, even if these structures aren't necessarily really old, they're just moderately old. And, you know, 1970s structures falls into that. But now that it looks like maybe the DPW wants to do that project with WPI, then we don't need to do it. So I think the whole reason for making it bigger, which was simply to set the context that this preservation is also livability and sustainability, is maybe no longer necessary as something for us to do. So, all right, I will circle back with Holly and say, look, you know, I'm glad you're talking to Graham and Lauren, but unless there's some reason to revisit it, the commissioners really just want to do the historic stuff as our WPI proposal. And I know that Dominic is fine with that because that's what we talked about with him. Okay, great. Street furniture policy. I included the minutes of a working group, and I included a draft policy. That policy has been shared with Libby, and the working group has not reconvened because we're waiting to see what Libby wants the working group to do. But I wanted to give the commissioners a chance to have input, anything you disagree with, anything you feel there's oversight. What do you think? Did everybody have a chance to read it? I can put it up on the screen. Everyone's nodding. Okay, you guys did your homework.
It sounded like Libby was receptive to it, so,
It was, she asked us to do it. It's actually her idea.
you know, that's, I think it's a positive thing.
No,
Mickey?
when it comes to the bollards, the street bollards, I know that's sort of a, you know, there's a couple different, you know, people have different views on the bollards. And I have to look at that also a little bit from my disability, you know, direction, where when you look at India Street, for example, there's a bunch of bollards, and some of them, is, I think you might have pointed out here, they're not very attractive. And there's a few that are fine. But they, you know, they're there to keep people from parking on the sidewalk. And I think a lot of people will put them out on their own. And the town doesn't really like that because it is an encroachment. But they do keep the cars off the sidewalks, and they, you know, you can see where they are existing, and the people park in the street, and there's still room to get by. It's a little tighter, but it works. You know, it solves the problem. And you know, I like that. I like the fact that people aren't parking on sidewalks, and not that I think I want to encourage bollards, but you know, it's a tool, and they, you know, they're sort of historic. There were some bollards way back when, probably not very many, and I'm not sure the real history about the whole thing, but I would like to still not, and I can't remember what's written here, but I don't want to, I'd like to see it not say that we really dislike bollards, because they serve a purpose.
So Mickey, I agree with everything you said. The street furniture policy doesn't say anything about bollards. It just says that they're addressed under the encroachment policy, which already exists. So can you see it on my screen?
Yeah.
So this policy is active and discussed a fair amount at the Roads and Rights of Ways Committee. And it addresses this category 3 encroachments that have a historical precedent as determined by the select board may be permitted to remain, and that they're identified on a town maintained list and land records, and the list is maintained by the town and noted on the town GIS system. So I think as the historical commission, what we could do is, if we wanted to, it would be a different project, but we could go around and say, these are the historic bollards.
Yeah.
And, you know, everything else is governed under this. I mean, this really, it does address bollards. So I just didn't want to create in the street object policy something that conflicted or duplicated a category of object that was clearly covered somewhere else.
Okay. Well, maybe it's fine just to leave it the way it is. That's fine.
Let's see if there's any. I think they struggle to enforce that policy, but I mean, for the purposes of this effort, let me get the packet up.
I mean, parking on the sidewalk is a big problem throughout town, and I know that Matt Fee and other people are trying to deal with it. And you know, again, do we want to encourage it, or you know, put in new bollards like on Fair Street, where again you don't need to park, but people are parking on the sidewalks anyways. You know, I don't know how else to get people to stop parking on the sidewalks except by putting up an obstacle to prevent that. So it's a big subject that needs some studying, but bollards is part of the conversation.
Yeah.
This is Clement, excuse me to jump in, but the other part of that is that if you have the bollards, then you have to be able to jump up on the sidewalk on the other side if you're the car to get around, you know. Because people do park, even though the bollards are there, they will park in the street, but then the cars going around have to be able to jump up on the sidewalk. So it's kind of a double pronged.
Well, so
problem.
this policy doesn't really, you can see what it says about bollards. Bollards are encroachments. Refer to the town of Nantucket encroachment policy. Should we write something in here about some bollards or historic bollards are also addressed, and the town maintains a list of bollards that are historic. I don't know. Do you want me to change anything here about bollards?
Well, some bollards were historic. So if you're
Yeah.
saying right there, bollards are encroachments, not all of them, that makes it look like they're all encroachments and are sort of new. So maybe a little bit more clarification there.
Okay, so but I think yeah, why does it say bollards are encroachments? I mean, all of this stuff is encroachments. That's why we have a policy about it, because it's all stuff that's in the public way.
Yeah.
So add about historic bollards. I mean, the reason this policy exists is so that if somebody wants to put something on the sidewalk, they know they have something to look at to understand, can I put it on the sidewalk? And if I do, what's going to happen? So this says bollards. So the point of this is that if somebody says, I want to put a bollard up, they would look at this and then they would say, oh, I need to look at this other policy to understand. So instead of saying bollards are encroachments, I could say bollards are covered under the encroachment policy,
Sure.
which basically just says, don't put up bollards. I mean, that's pretty much what the encroachment policy says.
Or you would need a
I mean, it says,
to put up a bollard.
yeah, it says, but it says, actually, I think it says talk to the DPW, right? So if you want to put up a bollard, we want you to talk to the DPW. So maybe this should say you need to talk to the DPW. Some bollards are historic. See the encroachment policy.
Sure.
And anyway, Libby will tell us. This is also really a matter for Rob and Libby. But I'll make that note. I mean, this podium, we had a long debate, as you could see from the minutes, not a long debate, we had a discussion about it. And we basically decided, if you have a podium, it's because you're doing some sort of business on the sidewalk, and the town has a policy for who can and can't do business and what business and what you have to do business on the sidewalk. So this street object policy should not put itself in conflict with that. Anything else you guys want to suggest for edits to this for Libby to consider? Any comments about the role the historical commission should play in terms of, the design guidance is that it should be, natural materials, muted colors, consistent with Nantucket style. Do we need to have anything more in that? I see heads shaking.
Well, I think
Susanna?
that, no, I just think that each case is, I think those are all great words, and I don't know, just an example I'm thinking of is right on the corner of Mitchell's where they've got that sculpture that's pink and green.
Yeah, I
and
thought about
gold
that too.
And a little man, and I have no idea who allows that to be there and why it continues to be there, but it is there. And so I once again, these are a lot of rules and a lot of regulations, and who is enforcing all of this. When they were talking about the fine, if you don't remove it, you get a warning. Then if you don't remove it, you get fined. I guess someone is doing all of that, but it's
well, that's how the sign committee works for signs that have to
Yes.
be permitted. Yeah. So a freestanding art object, which is what I think you're talking about outside of Mitchell's, that would be something, that the town is saying. The town is basically saying, if you want to put something on the sidewalk, which is public property, there's categories of objects, and some of them need to be permitted, and the art needs to be permitted.
No, I think it looks like it's very clear, and they've made it all what you have to do to get it approved or not. And Yeah, I think if you're on the sidewalk, you're on public land and you can't be selling yourself or something else. And that all makes a lot of sense.
Georgia?
I think having an application for art with all of these categories is not a great idea. I would rather if there's got to be an application for art at all, which I think is dubious, because something that I object to might be something Clement would like, and vice versa. I really wish we could, if there has to be an application for art at all, I wish they could hand it over to somebody else. First off, I don't think there should be one. I just think an art application, how often does it happen? How objectionable is it really? How long do these art installations actually last? Other than the one maybe at the Sparks Avenue Rotary, which is massive. You can't really put that in ad hoc and take it down ad hoc. Other than those, these little pink and yellow things, I know who that guy is. You know who that guy is. He used to be down on Hummock Pond Road and he doesn't have housing anymore. Other than those things, how much do we need to have the town involved in deciding what the aesthetics are of an art object? If we have to have an application, hand it over to the Artists Association and let them decide within 10 days of the appearance of this object whether or not it deserves to stay there. I just think the whole thing is distasteful on the part of the municipality.
Yeah, so this suggests that it's not the Historical Commission that's evaluating art. It's the Department of Culture and Tourism. And this is a draft, so I don't even know if they're interested in accepting that responsibility. And I don't know if Libby would agree, but yeah, this draft policy does say that you can't put any kind of art you want out in the public way. You have to get permission. And I'm noting that Georgia thinks that that's overkill. Does anybody else agree?
In general, I'm always happy to see art exhibited. So I kind of agree with Georgia.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to turn this into some sterile, boring place. I mean,
I agree with that. I second that.
okay. I think we might find when we discuss this with Libby that it just, it creates, she needs to have some standardization, because if people put out art that folks find offensive, or that, that she might, or that's blatantly commercial, there is this, like if it's a sculpture gallery and they put their sculpture on the sidewalk that they're selling in the gallery, that is actually a violation of an existing policy about display of wares, I believe. So, so now we're talking about just public art that somebody thinks is fun and they want to do, which in many ways is wonderful. So, but it could also be a problem. I mean, certainly if it impinges on accessibility of the sidewalk or if it creates a hazard, but it should be removed. So I guess an alternative would be to say your art cannot create a hazard and cannot, instead of saying it's a permit, you can say it can't create a hazard, it can't obstruct the public way, which is a 36-inch clearance, and it can't be offensive and contrary to our policy on art. And then it's,
or it can't be an extension of your commercial establishment right there.
yes, maybe that's a better approach than to say, so in other words, it's like, you don't have to ask permission, but you do have to comply with our guidance or your object will be removed.
Right.
So how does this apply to the, I think it's right outside of the Artists Association Gallery on Washington Street. There's a bench with a,
Yeah, Stuart Johnson.
yeah, it's taking up space on the bench. It's art. I guess it's an encroachment. It's in the public way. So does this relate to that?
Well,
we can say they're not.
So I actually put something in about that. Yeah. So I said, art that violates chapter 97, one more Chinese words may not be displayed on public property. Do we want an exception for the Artists Association gallery? Because that's a public, that's like a nonprofit. So generally there's exceptions for nonprofits. We might also want to limit how long your art can be displayed, just so stuff doesn't start falling apart and get stale or whatever.
I think that's the way to handle it right there. You know, put a time
Limits. Set standards. No permit. Okay. All right. Well, I'll transmit this feedback to the working group and the town manager. Was there anything else about different categories, style guidelines, anything? Are we happy to approve benches if people want a custom bench? Just to take, the HDC doesn't approve furniture, so like doesn't, there's no reason for it to go to them. And if the town manager would like to have help, I think, we could offer to do that.
The guidelines that are set forth in this document, I think are really thorough. And yeah, it all seems to make sense.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that feedback. Tom Nevers bike path. So this is super conceptual. I don't think this is really anywhere near happening, but it's nice that they want feedback. And let's look at it.
I was excited to see a bike path proposed. That it's such a long, straight corridor where a pedestrian or a biker, I think, can feel uneasy, and to have something that's off the road, just I think will really help quality of life out there.
Yeah.
long overdue.
Yeah. So there's some, clearing vegetation to allow for access. So we're going to lose some vegetation. I don't know what trailhead enhancements are. I mean, this is a concept. I did think it was interesting that they're proposing a boardwalk.
That caught my eye.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna, if anybody wants me to zoom in, I'm just gonna, so it looks here that they want to lower everything. So you can see this grade is proposed grading in blue and existing grading here. So, and they have a planted buffer, which, we've commented in the past about how important that is. They have a boulder wall in here at times. This is the raised boardwalk. You can see that this treatment would change with the Belgian block. Any comments, anything you want to share at this point? Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I would not like to see a boardwalk, nor would I would like to see boulders. I would like to see it remain like many of the other bike paths we have, and just stay on the existing topography with a separation between the street and the bike path, like we have been doing.
The boardwalk,
Okay.
it looks like the boardwalk is going over a wetland area. And that's probably why they're elevating it so it's not encroaching. And
I'm trying to think of where there's a wetland area on the road.
I know I don't remember one either, but they are saying there's right on their notes right here. Yeah. Over wetland area on the left.
Through the land bank.
On the left, Hillary.
Yeah, here. Oh, right here. Oh, boardwalk potential over wetland area. Can you see it, Tom?
I do see it, but I'm still at a loss as to know where that wetland is, unless there may be a snail darter in there or something.
You know, right there, Hillary. My only comment there is that, you know, that's a very densely inhabited area on the south side of the road or the west side. And
Yeah.
I'd want to just comment that they should provide a number of access points up to the bike path, so that people, you know, they're not crossing through the vegetated, you know, just periodically, so the residents there can cross the street and get right on the back bike path. It's right there, so they can drive across the grass strip, but they may not want to.
Like every 3 streets or something?
Yeah, I mean, periodically it does, and this is real preliminary. Maybe they'll do it anyway, but it's just to make sure that it's not one like half-mile strip of no access to the bike path.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the Pulpus Road bike path, and they have ensconced it just, you know, every so often access. I don't want to see them do a crosswalk at every spot, though. That would be overkill.
Oh,
And I know
yeah.
that also the Pulpus bike path does have a section of boulders where they're up against a hill. So I guess the answer is just they have to do what they need to do. The boardwalk does seem excessive, but if that's a reason to protect wetlands, maybe that's accessible. I do like that they kept it on the east side of Tom Nevers Road, if you'd call it the east side, because of all the driveways and roads you'd have to cross on the other side. And yet the people that live there, they are the ones that are going to be going up and down that bike path. So might it not be easier for them to just turn into their street instead of having to cross Tom Nevers Road to get to their street?
The fewer,
It's the conflicts with the cars pulling out of the driveway.
I'm sure it
Yeah.
is, but then the bikes are going to be crossing.
So sorry, Clement, you're suggesting that,
No. I'm thinking it through as to who are they expecting to be on this bike path? I know it goes all the way to the eventually remodeled Tom Nevers Fields or park. So that is, if that's the ultimate destination, then this is great because it doesn't, I mean, it goes straight there, or as straight as it can go to Tom Nevers Park.
yeah, I mean, I just think they're thinking about how, you know, all the people vacationing and living in this area that want to access the beach or want to go to Sconset, making it safer for them to travel in something other than a car.
As a biker or a runner on the path, it's comforting to not have any roads crossing or very few roads crossing. So I think it's a good idea for it to be on the northeast side of the road. It is a pain to cross over, but I think Mickey's suggestion helps mitigate that. But for the main use of the path, fewer lanes crossing it, I think is good.
Yeah, I mean, I think just when you're coming out of a road and you want to get on a bike path, you're stopping, you're looking for traffic, you're making sure you're crossing at a safe moment in time. If you're on the bike path cruising along, you're not really thinking about the cars coming out of the driveway that also might not be thinking about you. So that's where a lot of bike accidents actually happen. Cars turning across the bike path.
There's really not that many driveways that enter out into Tom Nevers Road. There's mostly streets. when you get around the big turn there, that's where the driveways start to occur. But there's really not that many.
Yeah, well, these
Most of those are
streets,
all streets.
yeah, these are the streets, so cars crossing the streets, so.
But they're heavily
Um,
populated streets.
Yeah, there would be a lot of, I don't see why you'd want to put it on the other side and create all these conflicts. See, look at all these streets you'd have to cross versus here. I wanted to just share a few details, just thinking about, let me just find it. Just as we get into these, wait, hang on, let me stop this, share screen. Okay, share. So as we get in, so we can give specific feedback on the route and everything, which we'll distill, but also the details. I wanted to share some details that I've just observed on the running paths and bike paths out of town. They're using these yellow plastic truncated dome things. This is what they use in Brookline. It's metal. That's how it looks. This is what they use in Central Park. It's like terracotta, like unglazed. I thought this was really nice looking.
One's concave and the other's convex.
Well,
think they're all-
no, it looks that way. They're bumps. They stick up. Yeah. This one, I can't remember. Oh, this one is in West Brandywine Township. I can't even remember. Oh, yeah, I saw this in Pennsylvania. This is the same kind of thing, but in Pennsylvania. This is a curving detail in Central Park. I just thought this was really beautiful. And you can see this is a crushed stone or stone dust, some kind of path. This is the path around the reservoir in Central Park. This is like the most highly trafficked path you could imagine. And they've chosen this soft surface. This is the Boston Public Garden. These are the trash receptacles that they have there. And this is like a heavy metal removable top. I just thought these looked really great.
I can't help but to think about how many squirrels poke their heads up out of the.
Yeah, or squirrels. You're
just have
lucky
a
if it's a
few.
squirrel. Might be an urban squirrel. So I just show that because, you know, we need to give feedback on this bike path. So I want to hear from you what kind of feedback we want to give, but we could also give just general photos and examples of, as the DPW and the planning and different groups start thinking about these details, what kind of details we'd like them to consider. Comments. So what should we say about this bike path?
You know, the truncated domes is an easy one to comment on, and you know they're going to put them in. They're required, and in fact I think technically they're supposed to be contrasting colors so that they stand out. We haven't, you know, they don't do that downtown, fortunately, but I think in the bike paths they've tried to do that, and so the choices they've done are either the yellow or the sort of brick colored. And you know, the brick colored obviously looks a little bit more natural. You know, the iron ones that those are nice. I don't know how they cost wise they fit in, but I think those would be considered, you know, even downtown, the iron ones, if we had to go there. And you know, that I think is nice, but it looks a little yellowish, and maybe it's just the picture. But I think the brick colored ones are, you know, they give the contrast. They really do what they're supposed to do, and they look a little bit more natural than yellow, put it that way.
So yeah, I think they preferred the yellow. They'd specify the yellow plastic ones on the bike paths out of town, probably for cost. But
I think this is preferable to the yellow plastic.
Definitely.
yeah, and it does give you the contrast.
Is that plastic that we're looking at right there?
No, it's like a fired clay, like a bisque.
I wonder how much they cost.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, it's Central Park, but this is in this random park in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia metropolitan area. So,
I like
We-
the yellow ones just because they seem to, if we're out of town and we're in Tom Nevers, which is more of a, I don't know if rural is the word or beachy, but
beachy.
it seems to me that the yellow ones more of a sandy.
By yellow, you mean this, what we're looking at now?
Yep.
Okay.
I also think yellow means caution.
Good point.
Perhaps you react
So-
more strongly to that.
I don't have a picture of the yellow plastic ones. Are you saying you'd like the yellow plastic ones?
No, hate the
No.
yellow plastic
Yeah.
ones. Those are much better.
You know,
I
they also
also
don't
like to-
hold up. Sorry.
They don't. Well, let's hope for consistency. That would be nice.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I don't want them to continue yellow plastic just because they've started with yellow plastic.
Okay. All right. So we can suggest these clay tiles. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So what about like fountains, benches, bike racks along the route?
Yeah.
That's probably stuff to talk about as well when it
Yeah.
comes to that point.
I mean, the sense that I'm getting from you all is that as far as comments on this bike path at this stage, we don't have any comments on the route except that it, comply with state archaeological guidelines and state wetland guidelines. Right?
And we like the buffer, and the more the better.
Yes, the buffer is something we like that they've flagged that.
If it is required to have benches there, I'm voting for the wooden benches that we use in town. It's just Nantucket. Look,
I think what we should say is that we'd like to review the details. Review details of the amenities. Okay?
Yep.
And we can mention, benches like downtown. I mean, they might have a couple that they want feedback on, I don't know. Okay. Angus.
Hillary, I just want to give you a heads up. In the next 5 minutes or so, I'll have to switch over to the Wisconsin Advisory Board meeting.
Okay.
so-
And I guess that's true of Clement too. I did have this, I'm sorry, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Stop. We've taken along, maybe we haven't moved through things as quickly as normal because I'm navigating whereas often Holly navigates. But I did include as our last discussion item, a chance just to do this kind of mid-year check-in. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at this, but what this says is we wanted to increase protection of historic resources by town administration, all elected leaders. And then we had some things that we wanted to do and get done that we thought would help us do this. So the survey grant, which I think we're right on track. I mean, that is going to happen. Holly's working on the RFP. I have an update. I don't have time to give you. We can talk about it in July. The town administration select board adopted policy for historic pavement. I think at least that's been delegated to Holly. We've been stymied on it. The joint meeting, so far it's just out. I think what this shows is that the stuff that's in our control, we've been doing great at. And the stuff that's out of our control, it's just, out of our control. I'm hoping this one, number 4, when the WPI work is done, this can help us with this. This will get back on track with delivering quarterly written reports. It's probably going to be, you know, semi-annual. Quarterly is probably more than they want to hear from us, but I'm comfortable with the idea that we do a mid-year and end of year report. Any comments about how we're doing, what we're doing? Here, let's look at this. This is more positive news. I think we've got some great initiatives going on here. The Preservation Month exhibit, the programs for home builders and realtors, the community of color. Now I've added a new one here, acknowledgement of tribal lands. I'd like to talk about this more at our next meeting. Something I've been thinking a lot about. These public programs, you know, this is a separate goal, but these are public programs. So what do you all think about how we're doing, what you'd like to see? Things like that.
Hillary, I think that number 4, I think you're right. Number 4 is already embodied in those other programs. You could do away with
Yeah.
number 4 as a separate goal.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to keep it as a way of measuring, making sure that we keep doing the other things, but they really are what we're doing.
Well, the overall goal is increase support for preservation among key associations and the broadly defined public. Now, I think we put it as goal number 4 because we had this idea of connecting cultural history to current cultural values. Like, in other words, changing making the things that we want to preserve, having people value them more.
I think that's very important.
But it is true that if we do all of these things, that will help people value them more. So yeah, I was feeling that it was kind of redundant. Is everybody comfortable with the things we've chosen to work on, where we're putting our effort?
I am, definitely.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any thought about how we could do better on some of these?
It's frustrating. It's just as you've pointed out, it's when we have to collaborate with another group that it sort of breaks down a little bit.
Is it us? I mean, is there anything we could do differently?
I think it's just about being available to meet.
People's time.
Maybe, Hillary, it's also, as you suggested in another context, maybe it's also a question of discussing the potential for meeting with informally as we bump into Dawn Holgate, Matt Fee, other town employees or officials that we happen to know personally.
Yeah, I mean, each of us are ambassadors.
Yeah.
Okay. I am going to be putting my name in for the Planning Commission because I think historic preservation should be represented on the Planning Commission. I mean, they would have to choose me, which seems unlikely, but I'm going to go for it, which, you know, could be helped with number 6.
Thank you for doing that. Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. That'd be fabulous, Hillary.
We shall see. Okay. Well, I know people have to go and get on to other things. I've got some to-dos and any other comments or anything?
I make
Tom,
a motion, we adjourn.
okay.
Second,
Thank you, Georgia. Anybody need to discuss that at all? No, okay. All right, let's adjourn, everybody. Thanks. I look forward to seeing all your faces in person soon. I'll follow up with Holly on and everyone on the things we discussed, and we'll hear from David about the real estate handout, and keep on keeping on.
Okay.
thank you, Hillary.
Thanks, Hillary. Great job.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Week.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.